So one of the things that I wanted to bring in and validate about um, the triggers. So we're going to talk about the triggers here for a sec. The triggers for me, when I first started about having an autoimmune, I learned that being energy sensitive, before I really even knew I was a medium, people would tell me that I was like, I had some allergies. And I would say like, screw you, I'm not changing my life. I didn't want to change my life. That was the last thing I wanted to do. And then when I started to develop my abilities, I started to learn how much my energy was being drained from me. And I started to see where it was going. When I started to pay attention and be aware of what was actually happening to me, and that I was accountable for my own energy, and it wasn't anybody else's fault. It wasn't the doctor's accountability to fix me. It wasn't spirit's responsibility to disconnect me from some piss poor bitchy person in a piss poor mood, not piss poor, but just in a piss poor mood. It wasn't spirit's responsibility. It was my responsibility to be in control of my energy. And that's where I teach a lot of those other classes that some of you are familiar with. But I wanted to talk about the triggers. So if you are one of these people who has anxiety, what do you do to eliminate it? What do you do? What have you learned that helps you? I think everyone's like, oh. Mhm. That's right. I was going there next, Holly, with the hormones. Yes, a lot self-motivation. That's a really good one, Caroline. You phoned your sister? That's good. Anxiety, when you can bring something down, you notice how you're replacing that energy. So you're already intuitively guiding yourself to a direction, right? You're intuitively guiding yourself. Except for Stephanie, she bottles it up until she goes home. Stephanie, you're the like black sheep. You are getting better. I just love picking on Steph. It's so much fun. Oh, okay. But do you see that? Do you see that pattern that all of you have? You are already you're making an effort. See, Stephanie, I do know that you are kind of bluffing there. I think that you do have, I think you fidget with stuff. You engage in other things. While if you're in a work environment, you engage in emotion, like in movement of some sort. Um, down with the wine. I wish I could, but autoimmune says I can't with wine. That would be awesome, though. You are always moving. So, yes, it's that motion. So, you're noticing a pattern. Now, the one I'm going to go to is actually Holly talked about exercise. That is a really good one because what I've learned is spirit sets off a trigger of hormone responses. When I started reading, I learned that because I mean, I was suicidal several times in my life. I had written many notes, and I didn't really understand that I was responding. I had a chemical response going on based on what I was picking up in my energy field. I was picking up on other people's emotions, and so that was creating a chemical imbalance in my body. And I would have no food. I was not eating properly. I was eating stuff that usually had a lot of carbs, but not so much the carbs. It was more of the wheat and the gluten and the easy stuff or the junk food. And I would smoke and I would drink coffee, and I expected to be healthy and to not have anxiety and depression. But I would sit there, I'd get up and have a cigarette and a coffee, and I wouldn't eat till like 5 that day. I wouldn't eat anything, and I would just like live on coffee and cigarettes. And I had really bad anxiety, and I had really bad depression for a little, well, not really depression. It was more just I would just tank. And it was these energies of I would feel such anxiety around me. And I learned it was spirit stepping in because I was a very strong medium and I didn't have it under control. Then I would start writing suicide notes. And I wasn't really consider myself suicidal, but something triggered me to be. And that really led me on this journey of discovering how it affects us, that we do really have an immune system in our energy field that does affect us in some way. And so, it's not just what invades us inside, it's what's in our space, it's what's in our magnetic field, it's what's in that aura. We have that magnetic field that's supposed to keep us safe, and it's part of us. Just like the earth has an atmosphere, so do we. And, whenever something comes in, we respond to it, right? Just like when a jet is flying in the sky, you'll see a jet trail. And, yeah, it's all kinds of things that are happening with pollution or whatnot. But the reality of it is, it's a reaction. It's a reaction to the particles. They're interacting with each other, and that's causing a response, just like us. When there's something in our energy field, it causes a response. And it's an autoimmune response in most cases that I've learned, as it progressively gets out of control when you don't care for yourself. So it is definitely an immune response, may not be autoimmune, but there's definitely an immune system response when something enters into your energy field. For example, and I don't know the technical name for it, but because it's long, but there's this thing called fear pheromone. It's like a fear pheromone. And we actually, half of us, they did some studies, and like half of the people could respond to that fear pheromone. So half of the people that were in this study, they could detect by the emotion or this pheromone that was in the room that somebody was frightened when they were there. And the other ones were just oblivious to it. And the ones that were detected could detect this fear pheromone, because I mean, when you get startled, you radiate energy. You have a response, and that enters in, that's left into the space. And so it can be picked up and read and interpreted by somebody standing next to you without even saying a word. um, has anyone had that before, where that's actually happened to them, where they've felt that discomfort um, with somebody in the room because of the pheromones that were released? I think everyone's sleeping. Okay, absolutely. Leslie, it's really amazing, right? It's really, when you think about it, it's really amazing. So this is really interesting. Now, I know a lot of you hear me talk about, um, you hear me talk a lot about some of my clients. One of them, not some of my clients, but the type of clients I have. One of the things that a lot of you that are my students know, that the people that come to see me for help are usually, I mean, not talking about you guys, but the ones that are booked for readings. Some of the really hard readings are people that have not been able to get help anywhere else. These are people who I call them, some of them I call them the unhelpables, because there's been so much tragedy. Like there could be murder suicides, there could be suicides or accidental deaths that are suspicious. I have many clients that have loved ones who passed away that the cause of death was unknown. And it wasn't a homicide, but it was just unknown. It was an unknown cause of death. And a lot of these people, in the last, I think it was 20, no, not 20, it was 20 months, I believe it was, that we counted. Um, in that long time, there has been just under 50 suicides. And how many, you guys, think of that. Think about that. I mean, that's more grandmothers. And I've had more people that committed suicide come to me for readings than um, I have had people who are old people, like grandparents, or people who passed from cancer. I've had more suicides than that, than anything else. Does that surprise you? Anybody want to guess why? Not really. Yeah, Caroline, well, you worked in healthcare. You should know. Like, it's like, oof. Okay. So one of the things that's common. Now, are you ready? Now, I know that there's many of you that take supplements and they even sell some, but one of the things that's common, every single one of those readings, they were on supplements, they were on health food, they were taking this, they were taking that, they were taking pills for this, they were doing this diet with these pills, these medications. They weren't really depressed, but they were doing things. And one of the biggest common denominators was a lot of them either had diabetes, a lot of them either had skin rashes that were undiagnosed or suffered from migraines. Um, a lot of these people had a lot of the same T's and I's that connected to each other. And I mean, these are people from all over Canada and the U.S. Um, some some are even from other countries too. But isn't it amazing? Isn't it amazing how so many people could have so many similar situations going on with them? They were never really depressed, but they suffered from anxiety. Common story. Over half of them said the same thing. Um, Most of them, well, a lot of them had some sort of a diagnosis of diabetes, or like I said, some sort of an autoimmune disorder, but they didn't know it was an autoimmune disorder, and they were on diets that amplified their immune system. So they were on stuff like um, those patches, or they were taking shakes, dietary shakes. And what happens is, yes, maybe they made them feel better for a while, but what happened is it triggered their autoimmune, and then it started to create no what? No, Holly. It started to create um, this response. Yeah, don't do those things. It's one of the most common things. Um, when I had to come up with a new sign and symbol, okay, when I had to come up with a new sign and symbol, I was shocked because I have a symbol for overdose and I have a symbol for drugs when it comes to responsible. And one of the things that Spirit shows me when they've committed suicide, they will come in and they will go like this. And that's one of the first things. They will say, I'm accountable. And that's one of my signs and symbols. And what they'll show me is like a prescription bottle. And if it depends on how they passed away. So if it was an overdose, they'll usually show me a bottle tipped over, stuff like that. Or they'll show me a needle, depending on the kind of drugs they were doing. I started seeing symbols of patches. And I was like, were you quitting smoking? Playing charades here with a spirit? And that was one of the things that started happening. There's these fad diets that were going on, and it was triggering their autoimmune. And so then things just snowballed out of control. And so that's one of the things that is common. It's one of the most common things. There's a woman actually. I'm not sure if she's in here tonight. I don't know if she made it in here. She lost her daughter, and her daughter's death was cause unknown. Actually, the reason I'm bringing this up is they had an awareness for her son yesterday, and I sponsored them. I donated some coursework and some readings to them to help others who are in the same situation. But their daughter passed away, and they found her dead, and they had no explanation. The coroner had no cause of death, and it was 7 years later, and she still had no reason why her daughter died. And she left 2 little girls to care for, and this woman was in her 20s. She had some drinks, she had a couple beers, and she laid down and she died. But she had some autoimmune disorders, and there was some medications that it just didn't happen. Then her son, who also committed suicide, he actually coached volleyball. He coached many kids, and he was a health nut. He worked out. He took supplements. He took care of himself. Ate really well. Got after everyone who didn't. but he was on supplements and he had autoimmune and he was intuitive. And he just shot himself. So there was no reason other than there was a chemical response. So when you're intuitive, when you respond to energy around you, what like how do you I think the best thing I can say is be aware that your body and your immune system is so intricate. It is so amazing that it can take you from, this to this in like a blink of an eye. And it's all based on what is in your environment and what you're consuming and what's around you. So, I mean, if drugs and supplements can do that to you, can you imagine what's happening to us, what we're fighting against with food? Does that make sense to everybody? Like, do they understand where I'm going with that? When it comes to if supplements and what we consume that are making us supposedly healthy, if when we take those things and those supplements and those diets and those shakes and those, whatever, does that resonate to you with, okay, when we're consuming food, if we consume chemicals, would that do the same sort of thing? Like, is my body, my immune system responding? If I can respond to someone's emotion, if I can pick up on a heebie-jeebie in a room, if I can pick up on, on somebody's loved one, or know that there's a spirit near me, or if I can feel my own spirits or get an intuition or a knowing, wouldn't that mean that I'm responding to the energy in my environment too, or that I'm responding to what I consume? Does that make sense? Does that make sense to you? Everyone's like, oh, is this bitch gonna shut up? Yes. It's kind of an eye opener, right? Like, it's an eye opener. Our body and our energy is so incredible. Like our body, I know a lot of us don't like the way we're not confident in some ways with ourselves. We'll not like ourselves in some ways, or like how we feel. But it's really interesting to know that we are we really are in control of our own health if we are mindful of it. It's not anyone else's responsibility to say, let's make it this doctor's job to make sure that you're feeling good. The dairy products, Jamie, autoimmune. I think that for dairy, personally, like, I'm not a doctor, but from my own experience, I think that if you can handle dairy products, that's great. But I think that when you're in the phase of healing and in the phase of getting things under control, from my experience and what I've seen through myself and through clients who have literally gone from, cutting their wrists, and working through a suicidal attempt, and healing their guts to heal the autoimmune that's causing a lot of the situations that they're going through, with depression and anxiety. I find that dairy products are really hard on them, and it's a setback. So I would say a lot of dairy products could be a trigger to most people in that sense, just from what I've observed. But you would want to consult with somebody like Holly, or a naturopath doctor, or even just do some research. Yes. And you know what, Holly, I do eat dairy. I do. I do. I do eat dairy sometimes. Um, but I went through the elimination diet where I've got rid of that stuff. Like, I've healed myself to the point where I will push it. I will walk the edge sometimes because it's like I friggin' worked hard. And yes. so many people should not do dairy, and you know, some can tolerate small amounts. That's it. Like, you have to learn where you are. Just like I can only handle so much spirit. I can only do so many readings a week, and then there's other people who can just read and read and read, and it's like, seriously, oh, you need a hero cookie because I can't do that. And yeah, yeah, exactly. Small amounts, okay, and your body will tell you. That's exactly right. But where are our limitations? Where do we stop paying attention? Where do we start paying attention? And that's where, you know, health and spirituality are actually one. Just like some of you are going to be like, oh, don't go there. But spirituality and science are one too. Science proves the theory of spirituality, of spirit, of a source. And so where do we stop with that boundary? I mean, where do we start paying attention and taking accountability that we need to be aware of all things, if that makes sense, especially what we consume. Now, when I was really, you know, a lot of you are not quite aware of this yet, but some of you are. When I had really bad autoimmune sickness, when it was really bad, like, I mean, I had shingles all over my face, and I actually still have the butterfly rash. You can't see it under my Simpson skin, but I do have a bit of the butterfly rash still, and I did have shingles and everything like that for a very long time on my face and on my side. And I had psoriasis on my ass. It was so bad. And so it's a good thing that no one comes to visit me, because like for 2 weeks I didn't wear pants. Sorry, Stephanie's brother. um, you never know what's going to happen here. So it was really challenging. And I learned that once I healed myself, I was able to kind of put myself back in. And now I'm going through the elimination diet again, right? So it's where can you tolerate? And when I first started getting really sick and had all that stuff going on, I would even react to tap water. Like, I could not drink tap water because it would literally burn my throat, and I would get sores all the way down. It would just scald me, because I was so responsive, and also I was so on with spirit. I was just like doing so many readings, and I was so on fire with, I have to read this person, and I have to do this one, and I have a celebrity reading, and you know, I was so consumed with that, and it just took so much energy, and I become so sensitive that yeah, it just, my immune system was like, I felt like a bug zapper that was stuck on, you know. So what do you do?